Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today. I'm pleased to be here with both CV and Peter Villadsen, two gentlemen from the Dynamics AX R&D team. Thanks you guys for being here. We're going to touch on the subject of programmability and everything that means in Dynamics AX 2012. Before we get into it, I hope that you guys can give our audience and our listeners and viewers a little bit of background on what you guys do on the AX team. So CV, starting with you.
Sure, thanks Guy. I'm CV, short for Chandramouli Venkatesh. I'm a Principal Program Manager lead on the AX R&D team. I work on the X++ language area and the AAF and services feature areas.
I'm Peter Villadsen, and I work on the X++ team, and we deal with the language and its development and its integration with the .NET environment. Yeah, that's basically what I do.
That's good. Well, thanks guys for being here again. So, why is this issue of programmability, why is it so important in AX 2012, and what does that mean for developers and our future customers who are going to interact with the product going forward? Maybe kind of start us off there, CV.
Absolutely. Programmability to an ERP system is like the very lifeblood of the ERP system. No ERP system ever gets implemented as is out of the box as the product ships. Every customer takes it, customizes it, and makes sure it conforms to their business practices and their business policies, and that's how every ERP system on this planet is implemented. And it's done through programming, either through customizing the existing applications or developing new applications sitting on application modules sitting on top of the base ERP system, which is how companies realize value out of the ERP system. Now, in AX 2012, there's 3 or 4 key pillars that I would like to call out as major investments in programmability areas that we have put in a lot of effort into. The first one is improvements in the X++ language. For audience that is already familiar with the AX 2009 or earlier systems, you'll know X++ is the language to program in for the Dynamics AX system. There's lots of improvements in the language. The second major pillar is elevation of the .NET developer on par with the X++ developer, which means things that you earlier could not do in .NET. We have empowered the .NET developer to do a lot more in .NET and stay in .NET if they choose to. The third area is major improvements to the language performance itself. And the fourth area is bigger improvements in the development environment, both in Visual Studio, which is what the .NET developers are familiar with, and in what is called Morphex, which is the development environment that the traditional X++ developers are familiar with. So we have made major investments in all of those.
That's huge.
And to talk a little bit more is our guru.
Sure.
He's the X++ god.
Yeah,
he's a guru.
Sure. Yeah, so you're absolutely right, of course, CV, and we've done a lot in this release. We're quite proud of what we've accomplished. So let me start with your point number 1, which was the language stack itself, or the language that people use to develop these business applications. So we always have to be a little careful when we deal with the language itself, because partners, our ecosystem, have a large investment in programs that they have written. So we can't just wholesale change things behind their backs, because that'll translate into cost for them. So we have to be a little careful what we do. This time we cleaned up a lot of the laxness in the language. A lot of the ambiguities that had been causing people issues, we have removed. We have added a few new features that bring it very close to C#, something called attributes, which are really a meta programming concept that allows you to reason about code. It's a really interesting thing. We have changed some of the rules about what it means to override and so on. I won't go into the details here, but we have brought the semantics of the language to a new point of clarity and a new point of adherence to the .NET philosophy. So a .NET programmer who knows C# will feel right at home in the new X++ stack. So that was one particular thing we did.
Right.
We were talking about .NET developers and how they will sort of uptake this. And this is something where we've done a lot of work as well. The thing is, we want people who know C# and the .NET stack and so on to be right at home in what we do. We want to get out of the silo. So we want those to have the same environments to work with as you are used to in X++. So developing code in C# should be no different from X++. And everything that we've done along these lines is sort of marrying the two, integrating the two, so they make a more cohesive one. And it goes into, there are many levels of this. There's integration that we put into Visual Studio, and there's some glue that we put underneath the runtime system, so that managed code runs in the same environment as X++ code does. We've made a lot of changes like that, which should make it much more seamless for existing managed code developers to get to grips with the stuff that we have.
Right. I would add one more point to that. It's bringing the best of the both worlds. Bringing the declarative model-driven development that the X++ developers are used to into the powerful world of .NET development with Visual Studio and all its capabilities. It's truly bringing the best of both worlds together.
Exactly. Well, you mentioned power, and that was actually the word that kind of came to mind, just because we're obviously opening up the platform to a whole new audience within this release, and people who maybe would not have been interested or might not have been qualified to develop on the platform are going to be potential users of the product now, and that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, the learning curve is much easier to negotiate now, I would say.
Yeah. But think about it. Think about the value proposition. We have, a few thousand, maybe 10,000 AX developers in the world, but consider how many managed developers are out there. It's like enormous. It's a 2 orders of magnitude greater number there. Well, and it would be foolish for us.
7 million plus.
7 million plus, right, there you are. So it would be foolish for us not to tap into that huge potential, right? We want our product to grow, and we want it to be the major platform, and that's one of the avenues that we're taking.
I think the third area of improvement was the performance improvements in the language.
Yeah, and this is something that we're really proud of. So as you know, C# developers go into Visual Studio, they compile an outcomes and assembly that you run in managed code. So that will execute on the hardware of the computer itself. We have now made that into X++ as well. So now X++ can actually be compiled into what's called intermediate language and be executed just as if it were written in C#. So X++ now, in all senses of the word, is a managed language. And that is really huge, both in terms of what it can do now and especially what the next few steps are going to be. Yeah. Right now it means that particularly sensitive pieces of code can be run in orders of magnitude faster than they could before. And going forward, it will give us a much better integration story where people who write code and managed in VS, they'll be able to just take an assembly, add a reference to it, and boom, all the goodness of our stack is there with no other things need to be done.
And I mean, that's got huge implications in the development environment, right?
Oh, totally.
I mean, you're going to be able to really compress the time frame where you're testing out new products and be able to get things into production that much more quickly.
That's right. And more importantly, in the actual real world, in the runtime, things run much faster. So
in the finished product,
an ERP action like say closing out your journal or closing out your ledger, which earlier could take hours, could be done in like few seconds and minutes. Right? That's how much is the performance improvement.
It's really very very significant.
I can see where you guys are so proud of it.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then the last area was the development environment itself, Visual Studio investments.
Yes, so that's true. So as we move more and more stuff over into Visual Studio, more code, business logic is written in managed code, we needed some way to debug that effectively. So one of the things we did is we integrated the debugging story that you have in Visual Studio so that you can quite seamlessly debug X++ or code that you develop in managed languages. By the way, the X++ code that I mentioned before is also debuggable in Visual Studio. So you get the perfect experience with the X++ code that you can step into, modify all the variables, all that goodness is there. Right. But getting back to this other point, we have put the what we call the application object tree into Visual Studio. We put some drag and drop stuff in there so that you can consume the artifacts that are already in AX completely seamlessly. So when I'm using this, if I'm using a customer table or something, I really don't know as a managed developer whether that was written in AX or not. I have no way of knowing, and really I don't care.
And you don't care anymore.
Right.
Yeah. And that's part of the goodness that we put into the Visual Studio.
I love it.
So we truly have elevated the .NET development
to be on
par with X++. Yeah.
Well, this has been a great summary. I'm sure it's a topic you guys can go deep and talk for a long time and getting some great discussions on. But thanks for sharing some of the overview with us, and we're looking forward to the product coming out later on this year. So thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Guy.
Thanks, Guy.